group of people who are so misunderstood and hit with so many prejudices, yet they are still filled with happiness and spirit of life. That is people with Down syndrome. I remember my first experience working with a patient who had Down syndrome. I was still new in the field, full of textbook knowledge, but very little real-world understanding. The moment I met this patient, I realized just how little my books have prepared me. Because he showed me that he wasn't just a diagnosis or a set of symptoms. He was a person with humor, emotion, intelligence of sort, and an incredible ability to sense the mood in the room. And that's the thing. When people hear Down syndrome, they often imagine limitations before anything else. They think of what a person can do rather than what they can do. And that right there, that's the biggest misconception. Down syndrome isn't something you contract. It's a genetic condition caused by an extra chromosome, specifically an extra copy of chromosome 21. This additional genetic material influences development, leading to characteristic physical traits and varying degrees of cognitive differences. But if you think that defines a person, you are missing the bigger picture. One of the most common misunderstandings is the assumption that all people with Down syndrome are the same, that their personality, abilities and potentials are identical. That's like saying people without Down syndrome are the same. It's simply not true. I once worked with a teenage girl who had Down syndrome. She had a sharp sense of humor, a love for dancing and an obsession with fashion. If you had met her, you wouldn't have thought of a disability first. You would have just seen a teenager with big dreams. She taught me more about determination than I could have imagined. She had a goal in life. She wanted to become a model, and every time she walked into the hospital, she carried herself like she was on a runway. It wasn't about limitation, it was about making it her own way. And yet society often places barriers in front of people with Down syndrome before they even get a chance to prove themselves. It's assumed they won't be able to learn, live independently or contribute meaningfully. But that assumption is based on outdated ideas, not reality. Many people with Down syndrome go to school, get jobs and live fulfilling lives. I once met a man in his 40s who worked at a cafe. And you might think, oh, it was given to him in charity. But no, it wasn't. He was genuinely good at what he did. He had regular customers who specifically came to see him because of his welcoming energy. His presence wasn't just tolerated, it was valued. The truth is, the most significant challenges people with Down syndrome faces isn't their condition. It's society's perception of it. The lack of opportunities, the stereotypes, the low expectations. I've seen parents break down in tears when they receive a Down syndrome diagnosis for their child. Not because of the condition itself, but because they fear how the world will treat their child. But that fear often shifts when they actually raise their child. Because what they find isn't tragedy, it's joy. The unconditional love, the deep connection, the moment of unexpected insight that turns their world upside down. There's also this strange stereotype that people with Down syndrome are always happy. And while many do have an incredible energy for life, they experience the full range of human emotion just like you and I. I remember caring for a young boy who had Down syndrome and had just lost his dog. His grief was just as raw, just as painful as any other child's would be. The idea that people with Down syndrome are only capable of happiness is another way society fails to see them as fully complex individuals. And yes, there are challenges. People with Down syndrome are more prone to certain medical conditions, including heart defects, thyroid issues, and a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's as they age. They often require additional support in school and daily life, but that doesn't mean they don't have independence, intelligence, or the ability to contribute. I've seen individuals with Down syndrome defy expectations time and time and time again. A young man I worked with wanted to be an artist. He had talent for painting, and despite people constantly underestimating him, he built a portfolio that was stunning. One day a gallery actually displayed his work. When he stood there looking at his paintings on the wall, the pride in his eyes said everything. He knew he belonged there. That's the thing, people with Down syndrome belong. They belong in schools, in workplaces, in society, not as exceptions or as inspirational stories for the rest of us, but simply as people living their life. And yet, every time I talk to someone unfamiliar with Down syndrome, I realize how much misinformation is still out there. Some people still ask, can they understand things? Others assume they can't form relationships, can't work, can't have opinions. These assumptions don't just exist in passing conversations. They shape policies, education systems, and opportunities. I worked with families who had to fight tooth and nail just to get their child into the education they deserve. Parents who had to challenge the system that automatically assumed their child couldn't achieve certain things. Not because the child lacked potential, but because society had already decided what their limits were. The truth is, people with Down syndrome are as unique and capable as anyone else. Their journey might look a bit different, but it's not lesser. The only real barrier is the way they are seen by the rest of the world. I've seen individuals with Down syndrome change lives, not just their own, but the lives of those around them. They bring a perspective that's often overlooked, one that values connections, presence, and joy in a way many of us forgotten. If you never had the chance to really know someone with Down syndrome, you might still be holding on to outdated ideas, but I can tell you this: once you do, your perception shifts. You stop seeing limitations, you stop seeing the condition first, and instead see them just as them. And if you want to get smarter on nursing, health, and healthcare, then check out this video right here. I'm sure you will love it because it is specially picked just for you.